Exactly. That might actually show up at the beginning.
Sorry.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carol Hassel, and I am currently the chair of the board of directors of the Charlotte Spirituality Center. And on behalf of the center, I am interviewing our graduates, faces in the community of the Charlotte Spirituality Center, people we want you to know. I'm hoping that honestly I can get every graduate we've ever had to do an interview. That would be wonderful, so that you would get a really, really wide and comprehensive view of the face of the center. But today I'm delighted to be talking with Reverend Anne Findlay-Chamberlain. Welcome, Anne. It's good to have you.
Good to be here, Carol. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. Anne, go ahead and, if you will, tell us about yourself, and then share with us how it is you were drawn to the Charlotte Spirituality Center.
Well, my story with Charlotte Spirituality Center starts in Hawaii, where I had been living for about 15 years. I had a sabbatical a couple of years before I moved back to the mainland, and I debated real strongly during that sabbatical what I wanted to do. Part of it was I wanted to do, and I did, a 30-day silent Ignatian retreat. I directed the 30-day exercises. I also wanted at that point in time to do a different program, and I was really torn. I was looking at Shalem, which is really close to where one of my sons lives, convenient. And they had two different programs. One was in spiritual direction, and the other was in clergy, spiritual life, and leadership. And since I was in a parish, although I had been in spiritual direction for years and had a lot of interest in spiritual direction, I thought that one would serve the parish better. So I did that, but I still had this this desire to get trained as a spiritual director. I felt like and feel like much of my ministry is spent listening to people. And I see my dog Kiko in the background. He just left. I think that ministry really requires listening, and listening to what Spirit is doing, and trying to get ourselves out of the way. So fast forward a couple years later, Rod and I moved from Hawaii to Charlotte, North Carolina. And even before we moved, we came a couple times to visit and for house and things like that. And when you drive out of Charlotte Douglas International Airport and you head east, you have a couple choices. And, one of them is to go to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which had absolutely no interest to me. The second one was the Billy Graham Museum and Library, which was equally not necessarily my first list thing that I wanted to do. But we drove by this, in the middle of the dark. It was actually snowing. It was in January. First time we were there, and we drove past this crazy little church with the rainbow doors and this little sign outside that said Charlotte Spirituality Center. And, of everything on my ride from the airport to the hotel, the thing that stood out to me, aside from snow, was that sign. So I fully intended when we moved back that I would get a call in a church, and that wasn't to be. And I think there's good reasons why it didn't happen, and I was able to use that time in other ways. But that stuck in the back of my mind, and so I figured, I'm not in a parish. This would be a really good time to get certified, or to get, to further my education as a spiritual director. So long story short, I emailed Linda and, just said I'm interested. I was particularly interested in the fact, first of all, that there was a background and kind of a basis in the background of the center, which was in Ignatian spirituality. And that obviously worked for me, since that's something that's very close to my heart. The other thing that really attracted me to it, and I actually looked at several programs, including Shalem's, but I loved the fact that it was a local program, and that there was a once-a-month meeting of a cohort. And, you know, I had done the Shalane program for the parish, and it was great to have a 2-week residency every summer, but that wasn't quite the same as connecting with people monthly for a whole day. And so that was the selling point, to be local, to get to know people in the Charlotte area, and to be part of a cohort that would be, you know, people that I might be able to connect with and that would share some of my same values and ways of operating. So the rest is history in terms of that.
Yeah. Well, so while you were at the center, tell some about your experience there. You know, what was significant for you, challenging, you know, whatever you'd like to share with us about your experience in the program for the years you were in the program.
I loved having a cohort of people that we could meet with every month and not only share our learning about spiritual direction, but also share our lives with each other, because so much of training is practicing and going deeper. So I really appreciated that. I loved the fact that we had a number of different instructors, and each instructor came with their own gifts and their own backgrounds and their own ways of looking at material. The readings were wonderful. They kind of fell in place with what I had been doing at Shalane. And I really appreciated the fact that at the center, I was given the opportunity, you know, very early on to start doing spiritual direction with people. And actually, one of the people that I started seeing when I was in the center is someone that I still see as a director. You know, so that's a long time to know somebody and to you know, be able to minister to them. I feel like the biggest thing that I learned was just how to listen very deeply. And while my training as a counselor helped me to be a good listener, and the work that I did with Shalane helped me to do that, I think the gift and the skill was simply to sit back and settle back and not worry about needing to run the show at all, but simply that this was about God and what God's Spirit was doing in the midst of myself and another person. And once I got comfortable with that wonderful, freeing lack of responsibility for the outcome, it was a delightful thing to learn. I really appreciated the way that I was given opportunities to kind of stretch. Not long after I started at the center developed a relationship with a person who was doing some ministry among disadvantaged and homeless folks in uptown Charlotte, and was invited to go and do group direction there. That was a great experience. And at a time when there was a lot of racial unrest in Charlotte, and there had been a killing of by police of an African-American man, it felt like one of the ways that I could, in a very practical way, provide ministry with people who I would otherwise not have come in contact with, and people who came from a very diverse background. So, you know, it was just this gift of being able to kind of listen in and participate with what was happening and what the Spirit was doing in the greater community. You know, so that was a wonderful gift, and I was invited to go along to serve as the directee in a spiritual direction, group spiritual direction, kind of just a one-shot deal at a senior citizen place south of Charlotte. And that ended up with me doing group spiritual direction there for over 2 years, which was, again, another amazing opportunity, and also surprisingly diverse opportunity. You would think in kind of in South Carolina, everybody would look a lot like me. And it was amazing how diverse the community at that retirement center was. There were people from all over the country and international people. And that was an opportunity to also do spiritual direction with people that can't come from the same background and the same faith traditions as me. So in that group, there were people that we had couple people that were Hindu, and a number of people who had been part of a church but had given that up years ago, and people of no faith, and people who, were much more conservative. And it provided an opening for me to just to grow those skills, as well as to relax and feel comfortable in that kind of a setting. So I really appreciated that opportunity. And I think the highlight probably for me was the retreat weekend that we did as part of the program. That was just wonderful way to get to know my peers, to practice some of the skills that we were learning, and to get away and to get to know the staff better. Challenges, the biggest challenge that I came across was actually the physical setting. And that is that's not a challenge anymore for the Spirituality Center. We kind of suffered through noise, mold growing on the ceilings, air conditioners dripping. We had one of the Saturdays I was there in the middle of winter, and you got to remember I had just come back from Hawaii. We didn't have any electricity, so we had no heat, and challenging. Getting through that kind of a circumstance was challenging, and that was the one. Like, that would be the disappointment that I had, was just the facilities weren't real supportive or conducive for intimacy or trust in that way. The other thing the other opportunity that I had was to provide spiritual direction at the Wild Goose Festival. And I had heard about Wild Goose when I lived in Hawaii, and thought, wow, I'd love to go and to be a part of that, and to go and be able to do spiritual direction at a place like that outdoors, and to do spiritual direction in the midst of these huge crowds sitting on lawn chairs with people walking by, and a river rolling past, and rain falling down, and scrambling to get out of the lightning and the thunder. Those were not only wonderful ministry opportunities, but it was a great way to kind of understand how spiritual direction can happen many places and any place, if you are just paying attention and of a mind to listen to what someone else has to say.
Yes, even in a moldy, drippy facility.
Yep, amazing.
Yeah. So I do want to say, and you mentioned it, Anne, but I do want to clarify for those who are listening in or watching that that we are in a new location at this point. Dry, above ground, windows, safe, clean. Yes.
And I can attest, because I've been to the office.
Yes, exactly.
I'm jealous.
So Anne, tell us now then a couple of things. What you're doing currently, and how is spiritual direction a part of what you're doing now?
Okay. After I finished at the Spirituality Center, I started seeing people at a practice in Charlotte. And then about 6 months later, my husband and I were thinking it might be time for him to retire in another year. And we wanted to be closer to our families. And so I decided I would look again for a call. I'm an ordained United Church of Christ pastor. And so I started looking at churches closer to them. And there was this little tiny church in Woodstock, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley. And I figured they'd take one look at my credentials and calculate my age and decide that, I was way too old to be called to another ministry. But such as these things work out between God and Spirit in the church, I received a call, started here in Woodstock about 9 months ago. It's a halftime call to a small town congregation, and I thought it was going to be just a cakewalk after some of my other experiences, kind of fade into retirement slowly. And what I discovered was first of all, my spiritual direction practice followed me. So I still see directees. For a while, I was going back to Charlotte once a month, and I would see them there. And then once COVID hit, I've been doing that all by Zoom from Woodstock. The other thing I realized right away was that the church I'm in they had been through some really rough times, and what they really needed was someone to listen, and to listen with their heart. And I found myself immediately, without even intending to, just having casual conversations that turned into deep listening from a heart, and connecting with where God was and doing in people's lives. I began a group, what would be kind of considered, I didn't call it group spiritual direction, but that's pretty much what it was, a group for women in the second half of life, in January. And ironically, when COVID hit, that group has just grown by leaps and bounds. And that's one of several that I'm doing where just time and again, people are it's just so amazing to me how much people simply want to talk about their experience in a safe place where there's no agenda other than the agenda to attend to what they're saying and what God might be doing in their lives. So that has opened up opportunities. We started a group for men, started another group for women who are younger, have a small group going for some of the kids who are like confirmation age. And so I have found that without even intending it, I am doing a whole lot of group spiritual direction. And in some sense, even our business meetings are what I had hoped business meetings could be when I did the clergy spiritual life and leadership program. Just opportunities to see what's going on with God in our midst. So, I don't think anything is wasted when it comes to God. And so, I think that my background, even before I got got my spiritual direction completed, God has used all of that and continues to use it. I keep imagining that that parish life will slow down once this is over. But on the other hand, I actually hope it doesn't, because I think this is a good sign as a pastor for the life of the church and what church maybe needs to be compared to what it used to be. But I still saw a directee this morning, actually the one that I started working with when I was a student. And, those times of sitting and listening are just wonderful, blessed opportunities for me.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. So Anne, if are you open and open to new clients, taking new clients in spiritual direction? And if so, how would someone contact you?
Yeah, absolutely, I am. There's two ways to get in touch with me, and one is my by email, and that is Kahu, which means pastor, KAHUANNE @gmail.com. They could also call St. Paul's United Church of Christ, Woodstock, Virginia, and get a hold of me. I'm also on the Spiritual Directors International. And I also have a blog called Wayfinding, and I write meditations. I was doing them every day, but several times a week. So that would give a person a sense of kind of how I perceive the world. I'm also doing some, haven't done one since COVID hit, but I've been doing some retreats and intend to continue to do that when we are able to do that again. And yeah, I welcome the opportunity to sit with people, and anybody that wants to sit for an hour is welcome. And if they don't, if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't work, that's fine. I think this is an opportunity where people have to feel very safe and welcomed and comfortable.
Yes. Yes.
I might add, Carol, that one of the things that's I think necessary. I think it should have been necessary before. I think it ought to be necessary for all pastors. But one of the things that's just absolutely necessary for me and as a spiritual director is that I am in spiritual direction, which I do, and that I have been, I've been in direction pretty regularly for, 15 years now, 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
That is just an invaluable gift to me and to my directees, to my family, and also to the congregation. And that's why I think that that ought to be a part of every ordination process is spiritual direction. The other piece of that is if people want to become spiritual directors and want to practice, there's the need for supervision and peer supervision. And I am involved in a group with other clergy people right now, which provides me some of that objective, safe space to process and talk about what's going on in me when I'm working with other people.
Yes.
So, and those things, I think, not only are they lifelines for me, but I think they enrich everything that I do and inform everything that I do. And I certainly would not want to be doing the pastoral work I'm doing without a spiritual director, nor would I want to be doing spiritual direction. So that's a bonus, I think, if someone decides they want to pursue spiritual direction. To be in the program and go through the program, they'll have to be in direction with someone. And
yes.
That's just what a gift. And at a rate that's ridiculously affordable.
Right.
Right. So, I don't think there's a lot to lose there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if people don't, some of my peers are not doing spiritual direction formally, but their lives are different because they went through a program where they learned to listen deeply to what Spirit is doing. And that we could use more of that in the world today.
We could. I'm so in agreement with that. I also convene a holy listening group here in Charlotte currently once a month, and it's in relationship with two women who have just graduated from seminary and are looking for calls, and two women who are currently in seminary. And they have reported that even having had pastoral care classes in seminary, that this way of being with someone and listening to someone is very different from what we learn in our seminary education classes. Yeah. Very practical, very real, a sense of greater authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's no, well, like when you're in a class or lots of professional groups, there's competition, and kind of the goal is to see who's best almost. And I think in spiritual direction, the goal is simply to be authentic and be accepted, and accept others for who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that gift. That's a gift to people.
Yes, yes, I pray it will be. Anne, thank you so much for sharing about yourself and about yourself as a spiritual director and what it means to you and how you are bringing it out into the world in ministry and in relationships. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Blessings on you.
And also you.